18, male, have been living with my grandparents ever since I was 2 years old. My mother passed away when I was just 1 year old from a terminal illness, so her parents decided to adopt me instead. My father had never been too keen on becoming a dad, and so he'd kept his distance from me and my family ever since I was born. He did visit sometimes on the weekend, but when I turned 5, he told my grandparents that he was moving to another country as he'd been promoted and decided that he didn't want to be a part of my life anymore. My grandparents didn't try to convince him otherwise either, since they thought it would be a complete waste of time, and they believed that I'd be better off growing up without him anyway. So that's how it was for me growing up, and I found out about it only a few months ago when my grandpa was sick and thought that I needed to know these things before I stepped into adulthood. It didn't really affect me much since I'd always known my grandparents were all the family I ever needed, and while I did feel a little sorry for myself that my own father didn't want me, I didn't let it show and went on with my life as usual. Thankfully, my grandpa got better, and as far as his health goes, his doctors believe that he still has a few good years in him. My grandparents have raised me, and naturally, they've paid for everything right from when I was a child. They'd never taken as much as a single dollar from my father and had made sure that I had everything I asked for, never mind what lengths they had to go to for it. My grandfather and grandmother had retired when I was in middle school, but they didn't just sit back and relax since they knew that they needed to secure my future as well. So they started their own clothing company since that's the industry they had the most experience in. They'd started off pretty small, and it was tough for a while. But a couple of years ago, their business took off, and we've been quite comfortable ever since. I'm grateful to them for all that they've done and continue to do for me, and I'm sure I couldn't have asked for a better family, very honestly. But then 1 week ago, my father reached out to me through social media to ask if I'd be willing to meet him. I was really shocked since I'd never expected something like this, even in my wildest dreams, as I'd always known that my father wasn't interested in raising a child. My grandpa didn't mince words, and he'd already told me what he used to think of my father, that he was a no-good, lazy cheat who jumped from one job to another trying to make some quick cash everywhere. He told me that he was glad to get rid of him when he moved away, and naturally, they didn't stay in touch after that. I didn't tell my grandparents about the message because I knew what they thought of my father, and even though I loved them with all my heart and felt terrible about lying to them regarding something so big, I couldn't just say no. I thought about it for a day and then ended up saying yes and arranged to meet him at a restaurant a little out of town so that I wouldn't be seen. I just wanted some answers to questions that had been bugging me for years, so I absolutely had to meet him. I'd seen a few pictures of him from when I was younger, and then some from social media profile, but when I finally saw him in person, I felt really sad and nostalgic for a time I hadn't even experienced. I did have a lump in my throat, but I didn't want to come off as an emotional mess, so I suppressed the urge to cry and greeted him as formally as I could. We hugged, and while I did feel a little disconnected initially, we soon got to talking and it felt really easy and comfortable. Eventually, after talking a little about my life, he told me that now he was back in town and wanted to take care of me. He said that he wanted to be a father to me and was ready to do anything that it took to make amends for the past if I wanted that in the first place. He also mentioned that he had an idea about how my grandparents who had raised me felt about him, but he reassured me that he was not the same guy he was 2 decades ago. He told me that he'd never been ready to have a baby or get married in the first place, but my mother was insistent. But now he regretted giving up his chance at fatherhood since he's well in his 40s now and is still a bachelor. He talked a bit about how my mother was his true one love, and he regrets everything that he'd missed out on by not being a part of my life, which really did move me. He apologized to me with tears in his eyes, and then he offered to pay for my college tuition. I was really taken aback that he was willing to do something so big for him, and said that I didn't need that since my grandparents didn't have an issue with paying for it. And I myself intended to get a job as soon so that I could help out. But he insisted, saying that this was his way of making amends, and now that he had a booming business and could afford to be a father first and a businessman second, he wanted to do it right. I was in shock and told him that I needed time to think about it and that I'd get back to him by the end of the week. We talked some more about it and then we parted ways. I was still in shock about the offer even after I'd come home, since this was all happening too fast. And honestly, just seemed too good to be true. I didn't need the money, very honestly, but I had thought about how it would have been fun to pay off my college tuition myself, since then I'd be able to take some pressure off of my grandparents because they were in their mid-60s and deserved some time off. And now, here was my estranged father, after never having said a word to me my entire life, offering to pay for it all and trying to become a part of my life. It all just seemed to be too perfect, so I decided to do a little digging and find out why my dad was here. It took me a few days, but I found a lot of dirt on him, which just proved what I'd thought earlier. When things seem too good to be true, there usually is something fishy going on behind the scenes. I looked up my father on the internet, and the only thing that came up were pictures and articles of his wedding with a Spanish actress. The woman seemed to be at least half a decade older than him, and even though she wasn't very famous, she was still relevant. Apparently, they'd gotten married almost 10 years ago, and it had made the news for how the actress had fallen in love with the waiter who'd served her at a restaurant once, which seemed romantic on the surface, but I could sense that there was something weird about it. My dad hadn't mentioned a single thing about his marriage or even being involved with another woman when we'd met, and it seemed weird that he'd totally forget telling me about something so huge. So I did some more digging and found a tabloid article that had been posted just a month ago, which said that the actress and my dad were reportedly headed for divorce after she'd caught him embezzling money from him over the years. It wasn't confirmed news since the source was a tabloid, but the word embezzlement made me extremely nervous. This article, combined with the fact that my father had shown up completely out of the blue to help me with money, was suspicious, so I decided to confront him about it. I took screenshots of all those articles and sent them to him, demanding an explanation, and he called me up a few hours ago to fill me in on his plan. Apparently, the tabloid was right about the embezzlement bit. He said that his wife's staff must have overheard their argument and leaked this information to the tabloids, but luckily, it wasn't credible enough for the news to spread. He told me that a month and a half ago, his wife had realized that he'd been embezzling the money she'd been making, and they'd gotten into a huge fight. His wife ran a moderately successful makeup line alongside her acting career, and she'd appointed him as the CEO since she didn't have enough time to oversee everything and she trusted him. But he'd been using that money to fund his own unsuccessful chain of restaurants. He'd been losing money left and right, but he was already in too deep, which is why he had no other option but to resort to using money from his wife's business. When she finally did notice it, they'd gotten into a huge fight, and while she had threatened to file for divorce if he didn't pay her back all the money within a month, he knew that she was bluffing since she loved him way too much. He'd been trying to convince her to forgive him for ages now, but she just wasn't okay with it and had given him an ultimatum last week, saying that he could either return the money or she'd be done with him. He couldn't risk that, but neither could he pay her back the money that he'd taken, since it still hadn't improved the condition of his restaurant, so he was trying to buy himself some time and stir up some sympathy by offering to pay off my college tuition. He said that he'd tell his wife that he'd actually been using the money to pay for my education, and that would definitely make her forgive him. He even offered to let me have an extra $50,000 if I kept quiet about this, in addition to paying for college with his embezzled money. My head was reeling by the time he finished telling me all about his plan, and the second he was done, I merely said that I'd find another way to pay my tuition and that he need not worry about it anymore. Then I hung up and haven't been responding to him since. I cannot believe that he actually thought that I'd be part of this illegal and frankly unethical plan of his, and I'm glad that I didn't accept his help earlier. He's been texting me to try and convince me to join him, but I'm absolutely not interested in doing anything of the sort, and actually want to stay as far away as possible from him right now. I think he's realized that trying to lure me with money isn't going to work, so he's trying to take advantage of my emotional side. He just sent me a text saying that while he would totally understand if I didn't want his help anymore, he still loves me as his son and believes that I do have a heart and would want to save him and his marriage. Now, I feel really weird about ignoring him, and I'm beginning to feel a little guilty as well. At the same time, I absolutely don't want anything to do with this plan of his, and neither do I want his money. I'm just confused right now. My emotions are all over the place. AITA for refusing to take money from my dad after I learned that he's been embezzling money from his wife? Update 1. I decided to keep a distance from my dad and also tell my grandparents about whatever had happened. For a couple of days after I posted here, my dad kept texting me and tried to get me on his side. I didn't even think he should have been texting me because just in case, if he ended up getting in some sort of trouble, I didn't want to be caught up in it. And I told him that I didn't want him to text me anymore and I didn't want anything to do with him or his plan. He got offended at that and began lecturing me about how it was important to help family out when they needed it, which I thought was really weird since it's just been a few days that we've known each other. And moreover, it's not even like he came all the way here to meet me. He just wanted to trap me in some stupid scheme so that he could keep stealing money from his rich wife under the pretense of helping me out. I told him that I didn't need his money or his help and that I was perfectly fine living the way I'd been living for the last 18 years of my life. After trying to convince me for a while, he seemed to give up and told me that I was free to do whatever I wanted to, but requested that I keep this information to myself. I was a little hesitant to promise him anything, but just to get him off my back, I told him that I won't tell a soul. Obviously, that's not true since I will tell my grandparents. Keeping a secret like this has been weighing on my conscience, and I don't want to let this mess with my relationship with my grandparents. They're the ones who raised me, and even though I did do some things behind their backs, this is too big to be kept as a secret. I owe it to them, and I can't take the risk of betraying their trust for someone like my father. They're not at home right now, so I'm waiting for them to come back. In the meantime, my father has been texting me non-stop to try and emotionally manipulate me into promising to never tell anyone about what he'd been trying to do. He's probably still holding out hope that I'll somehow agree to his plan, but that's not going to happen. I don't owe him anything at all, honestly. Update 2. So I told my grandparents about everything that had taken place these last few days, and they were pissed off. Not at me, but at my father, and apparently he'd been lying about my mother as well, and that really did hurt me. My mother had been the one who wasn't ready for marriage and kids given her failing health, but my dad convinced her that they were meant to be, and within a few months of dating, she was head over heels in love with him and agreed to have a baby with him. His own parents weren't particularly rich and had kicked him out when he turned 18, and he himself wasn't very motivated to earn money, so he'd believed that by getting my mom to marry him, he'd be getting a free place to stay and free food at my grandparents' place. But my grandpa didn't let that happen. And while he was okay with my mother having me, he didn't want my no-good dad hanging around or marrying his daughter until he could hold down a job for longer than 6 months. She wanted to elope because she wanted to make her relationship work, but my dad was more interested in the luxury of being a stay-at-home dad had my grandpa allowed him to marry my mother. And now that he knew it wasn't going to happen, needless to say, that effectively made my dad lose any interest he had in my mother or me. It was really difficult for my mom to get over it. But after I was born, she managed to channel all her energy into taking care of me for as long as she was alive. However, I can't just forget about the fact that had my dad not convinced my mom to have a baby in spite of her health, maybe she would have been alive today because the pregnancy did take a toll on her. She didn't hold any grudges, but I do. I can't stand the fact that my father messed around with my mother's life out of sheer laziness, and he's still doing the same with his current wife. When I got to know the truth from my grandparents, I'd been sobbing uncontrollably since I couldn't believe that I'd even bothered to give this man a second chance. After I composed myself, I told my grandparents that I was sorry that I'd ever met him, but they weren't going to hold that against me anyway, since it was only natural to be curious. We've also decided that come what may, we're going to make sure that his current wife learns about what he's been trying to do behind her back to avoid taking accountability for his actions. He might have ruined my mom's life, but I'm not going to let him get away with ruining another woman's life again, that's for sure. My grandparents also agree that this absolutely needs to happen. Update 3. Almost a week has passed since the last update, and a lot of things have happened since then. As I'd said earlier, I'd made up my mind to tell my father's wife about what he had been planning to do and how he was making a fool out of her. The process of finding a way to contact her was really difficult since she was in a different country altogether, but somehow we were able to get through to her manager and convey the message that we had something to tell her regarding her husband. That piqued her interest, and she did respond within a day or two after we sent her manager an email. She actually video called us to confirm that we weren't just trolling her, and when she was sure that we were legit, she decided that she could trust us. I told her everything that my dad had told me a few days back and watched her face turn sadder and sadder with every single detail that I told her. She'd known that my father had a family in the past, but she told us that my father had said that we're the ones who didn't want him to stick around, and so he let us go. So yeah, there's nobody in his life that my dad hasn't lied to. She also told us that a lot of people believed that my dad was with her only because she was reasonably successful as an actress and made a comfortable living. She wasn't extremely popular or rich, so she never thought of my dad as a gold digger, but after hearing us out, she had no other option but to admit that she'd fallen prey to his charm and sob stories. In fact, the only reason she hadn't served him with divorce papers the second she'd found out about his fraudulence was because she loved him way too much and wanted to give him a second chance. He told her before coming back here that one of his friends was seriously ill, so he needed money to fly back home, and even that she'd paid for in spite of whatever they were going through. He had betrayed her trust and broken her heart again and again. Clearly, giving him a chance didn't work. And he'd blown his second shot at redemption as well. She thanked us for letting her know the truth and looked pretty determined to end things with my dad, no matter how much it had hurt her. We were glad that she was finally going to file for divorce, and were hoping that maybe he'd even end up in prison because what he'd done was literally a crime. And not just that. He had no qualms about committing a second crime by getting me involved in it for sympathy points to get his wife to forgive him. I couldn't believe that I was linked by blood to such a disgusting and horrible man. Anyway, after we told her everything, I decided to block my dad as well, so that when he inevitably found out what I'd done, he couldn't get to me anyhow. I was going to leave for college in a month or two, so I had a lot on my plate anyway, and I didn't need my father's drama on top of everything. But 2 days after I'd spoken to his wife, he showed up at our house. I guess we'd overlooked the fact that he knew where I lived, and boy, was he pissed off. My grandpa had tried to block him from entering the house at all, but he'd pushed him aside and barged in, demanding to speak to me. I did so, and he was furious with what I'd done. He told me that I'd ruined all his years and years of work and that he'd need to start over with someone new all over again now. I was disgusted by the fact that these women who loved him so much were nothing more than backs he stepped on just to get rich. And I told him that I wanted nothing to do with him anymore. He told me that I had to tell his wife that I was lying and convince her to go back with him. I thought it was pretty stupid and delusional of him to even expect that of me after everything that had happened, and so I told him that I wasn't going to do anything of the sort. He'd committed a crime and betrayed his wife's trust, and now he had to suck it up and accept his mistakes. He was still being stubborn about the whole thing, and eventually my grandpa had to intervene and say that he needed to leave. He probably snapped when my grandfather tried to make him leave and decided to shove him really hard. I couldn't just stand by and watch that happening, so I pushed him away and told my grandmother to call the police. Things got heated and we ended in a physical fight, which was really out of character for me since I'm usually a very calm guy. But nobody could just push my grandparents around and expect me to just stand there and take it. I was beyond angry and didn't regret anything that I did. I ended up pretty banged up since he was stronger than me, but I managed to give him a black eye as well, so I'll count that as a win. By the time the cops showed up, I had to be practically dragged off him since I was totally out of control. Anyway, we did press charges against him as well, so as far as we know, he's currently dealing with the consequences of what he did to his wife as well as what he'd done to me. He hasn't been able to bother us since then, and we hope it stays that way. I don't care what happens to him anymore. My grandparents and I are just focused on spending as much time together as we can before I leave for college. And this is what I like best anyway. So I'm happy. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.